Hello and welcome to another episode of the Principal Liner Notes podcast. This is Sean Gaylord, and I am coming to you for episode 114. And I just have a few things on my mind that I wish to share with you. I know that for some of you, this episode may lead you into the end of spring break, such as me, or maybe you are in the middle of spring break. Regardless, whether you're on the top end or the bottom end or the middle part of spring break, I'm grateful for you pressing play or download on this podcast. And I want to just take a minute to kind of go through just a few things, some things that have been on my mind, all pertaining to music, and a couple of books that I'm reading, and then we'll kind of conclude there. So I'm going to try to make this podcast short and sweet. And I want to revisit an album that I have actually devoted, I think, 2 podcast episodes to. And it's an album that I often go back to. Do you have an album like that? Do you have a piece of music or a film or a book that you just revisit, and each time you revisit it, you may get a new idea or a new thought or a new insight? For me, that album is George Harrison's. It's really his third solo album, but it's considered to be his first one, if you will, and that is the album, came out in 1970. All Things Must Pass. You know this album. Even if you don't know this album, you've probably heard a couple of the hits that have derived from this album. I'm talking about My Sweet Lord, for one, What Is Life, for two, and an album that is an all-star cast, not only featuring George Harrison, pictured here on his estate, but also featuring, you may have heard of some of these guys, Eric Clapton, Billy Preston, Badfinger, Peter Frampton, Phil Collins, drummer, you may or may not know the name, Ringo Starr plays on it, Jim Keltner. The list goes on and on. Well, I don't know if Jim Keltner plays on this album or not. I'll have to double check and look at the liner notes here. I stand corrected. The other great studio drummer, Jim Gordon, not Jim Keltner. Jim Keltner, of course, you may know his work from Traveling Wilburys, but he appears on George's follow-up to this album, Living in the Material World. But man, yeah, as I look at this album, gosh, look at all these: Klaus Vormann, Carl Randall, Alan White, Gary Wright, Bobby Whitlock. Man, this is all the Derek and the Dominoes on this album as well. Dave Mason from Traffic, the great saxophonist, Bobby Keys, who played on a lot of the great Rolling Stones songs, and of course the production, the wall of sound, from Phil Spector. A great album, and probably, well, not probably, it's my favorite solo Beatles album. I've written about it. I've devoted episodes to this. This album was a life-saving album for me when I first encountered it back in the spring of 1989. And I share this album. It's a triple album, and as I open it, man, it's not just 2 records, friends. It's 3 albums in one. There's a song on here co-written with Bob Dylan. There's a Bob Dylan cover here. I mean, a lot of this album is moving. It's sublime. You have the ornate production of Phil Spector with the wall of sound, and just that dense reverb that plays all the way through. The cathedral-like steel guitar of Pete Drake. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful album, and it's an album that kind of came from a stockpile of George's. Here he is. Let's flash back to when he was in the Beatles, not all that long before this album was released, and he had several songs that he had submitted to the Beatles that were rejected for whatever reason. He probably played. In fact, All Things Must Pass, the title track, was actually covered by the Beatles when George was in the band, and not a great production. They didn't spend a whole lot of time with it, but and he probably heard some chirping crickets, not Beatles, but crickets when he submitted some of these songs. But the point is he did not allow those crickets to drown out his vision. He did not allow the indifference of the band to stymie his confidence. He just simply stockpiled the songs, put them on reserve, and he knew he was going to do something with them. And he ended up recording a #1 album that is considered to be a classic. It's considered to be the best of all the solo Beatle albums. It's debatable. And it's an album that has carried me through many times, and it's an album that I revisit again. And I revisit this album because I think about this is that time of the year, perhaps where we're making ideas and plans for next year, whether it's in a PLT or faculty or organization or team or what have you. And you might have an idea that you share that is greeted with the thunderous chirping of crickets, or perhaps that deafening sound of indifference. And I say, don't let those crickets, don't let that silence, don't let that indifference, don't let that mild scoff that you get when you share an idea stop you from making your masterpiece. Use those sounds, and perhaps those sounds may be the finishing touches on your symphony or your masterpiece or your idea. In fact, the song "Isn't It a Pity," which is just such a beautiful, beautiful song. George kind of, the way I interpret it is because it kind of at the end he quotes "Hey Jude," and perhaps that was George's way of maybe thumbing his nose at Paul, because Paul rejected the idea of George's solos on the song "Hey Jude." Now, Paul was right to his song, and it probably didn't work. But again, George took those songs. He didn't throw them away. He didn't toss them into the River Thames or go on a mountaintop someplace and burn the lyrics. He just took those songs and took those ideas, put them in a safe place, put them on the shelf, and then gather them up again to make this great album. What a great way to take that indifference, or to take those chirping crickets, and to take the power away from that, and to reclaim that power to support your vision and your ideas to make something great and beautiful. So All Things Must Pass. Great album, great piece of music. Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody who is on this album. I highly suggest that you seek that out. All right. So if you've been following a little bit of my podcast journey, you may have known that last year I came up with a different podcast, The Album That Changed My Life. And I put all this work and effort into it. It was kind of like my passion project. I took my time with it. And first episode launched, and probably just like George Harrison taking some of his songs to Lennon and McCartney, the podcast, let's be frank, was greeted with some indifference. And you know what I did? I kind of thought, well, I'm off that idea. I'm off that podcast. I'm basically didn't practice what I'm preaching here. And I just took that idea and I shoved it away, and I pushed it away. Well, the other day, I came across this song by the Kinks, Waterloo Sunset. And this is, man, probably, many consider this to be the best song that has come out of the Kinks' canon. Waterloo Sunset. I highly recommend you track down this song. And this is an EP of that song. And I just thought about that. Music evokes memories. Music evokes so much emotion and so many thoughts. And this took me back to when I was homesick as a freshman in college. And I used to think of this song. I used to play this song a lot. First time away from home, I was in the big city of Washington, D.C., and I thought about how the speaker in this song talks about is Ray Davies talks about, as long as I gaze on Waterloo sunset, I'm in paradise. And I thought, well, man, my family members who I missed missed dearly at the time. I thought, well, we're looking at the same sunset. I wonder what they're doing right now. Or that sunset kind of just brought me closer to them, and this song brought me closer to them. And I think about the healing power of music, the life changing, affirming power of music. And I thought back to the podcast. I thought, man, you know, maybe I'll do another episode and see what happens and see where it lands. So I'm going to do that. Thanks to listening to The Kinks, Waterloo Sunset, life changing song. And I will be revisiting an album that did change my life, an album that gave me meaning into the value and lesson of collaborative courage, courageous collaboration. And that's the Monkees' third album, Headquarters. Man, masterpiece, a garage rock masterpiece. And in my mind, an album that stands the test of time. In fact, Mickey Dolenz, the surviving member of the Monkees, is doing a celebration of this album and is touring across the country, performing this album from beginning to end, along with various hits. Mickey, if you're listening, come to North Carolina. Love to have you. But anyway, we're gonna pick up the album that changed my life with a salute and a tribute to the Monkees' Headquarters album. I mean, music does that. Music connects us. Music helps us tell our story. Music gives us so many entry points into so many great things. And this album, Headquarters, definitely did that for me. And I look forward to sharing that with you in an upcoming podcast, revisiting the album that changed my life. I'll tell you another thing that is on my turntable right now, and I saw this on social media. Chris Isaak, I'm a big fan of his music. You may know him from the great hit Wicked Game. I know him from that as well. And then I also know him from this great album, San Francisco Days. Just realized through his posting on social media, this album came out 30 years ago. I remember living in Washington, D.C., going to the Tower Records that's no longer there, and picking this up and playing it into the ground. So I just wanted to give a nod to this great album by Chris Isaak, San Francisco Days, celebrating its 30th anniversary. I look forward to seeing the hashtag San Francisco Days to see different memories that others have about this album. This album was part of my soundtrack driving out to go pick up my girlfriend at the time, who eventually became my wife. This was an album that I listened to quite a bit, and I have just such great memories of our early days together. So San Francisco Days, Chris Isaak, great album. Check this out. I highly recommend that. Also, those are the things that are on my turntable. This is what's been on my bookshelf lately. If you remember, maybe back to episode 100, it was episode 109. I had Greg Bear and Ryan Wojcicki on, and we talked about their great book, their great tribute to Fred Rogers, When You Wonder You're Learning. Well, it has come out in paperback. I highly recommend that you track this down. I read the hardcover last year, and now I'm revisiting the book again in paperback form, and it's just chock full of wisdom and stories and connections to the legacy of Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, and how you can connect his lessons and his examples from his television show and his life to your journey as a parent or your journey as an educator. And I recommend this book. I also recommend that you do turn to page 109 if you listen to that episode and see the great connection to the Traveling Wilburys. Also, the book has a brand new reader's guide. So if you're looking for a summer read or looking to get together in a book club, this is a great book to do that with. And now you have the Reader's Guide, and it is in paperback form. And I'm grateful for Greg and Ryan, and grateful for them bringing the neighborhood to episode 109 of the Principal Liner Notes podcast. So be sure to check that out, and then also check out their book, When You Wonder, You're Learning, Mr. Rogers' Enduring Lessons for Raising Creative, Curious, Caring Kids. Just the type of inspiration that we all need right now. You can never get enough of the peaceful, life affirming example that Fred Rogers poured out into his television show, into the neighborhood of make believe, into all of that. I've written about Fred Rogers before, and I've talked about him before on the podcast. And this book is definitely a validating, life affirming experience. Greg and Ryan have written a masterpiece, so I do recommend you pick this up at your friendly neighborhood local bookstore, or from your friendly neighborhood book ordering digital platform, whatever that may be. And be sure to follow the hashtag when you wonder, to follow the journey of the book and to connect with Greg and Ryan, or you can go to their website, whenyouwonder.org. So highly recommend this. Speaking of books, a book that I just finished, and I'm excited about the next steps with this book. If you've been following me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, you'll notice that I've been carrying around this book, The Teachers: A Year Inside America's Most Vulnerable, Important Professions, by Alexandra Robbins. And I spent a lot of time with this book. As you can see, I went through 2 sets of sticky notes. I highlighted the book. This is by far probably the most honest and sincere and accurate portrait of the teaching gig. And it will move you. It will anger you. It is a call to action. It is a book that is an unflinching account of the year in the lives of three teachers that Alexandra follows and writes so eloquently and powerfully about. This is a book that walks the talk. I'm very excited on the next and upcoming episode of the Principal Liner Notes podcast that I will have the honor of having Alexandra Robbins on this podcast. And I'm excited about our conversation. I'm excited to talk with her about the book. I don't think we'll have enough time to talk about, look at that, the 97 sticky notes that I've placed in the book. But again, this is a great book that I highly recommend. If you're not a teacher, that's okay. This book is for everyone. I highly recommend parents and grandparents, adults, school leaders, whether you're a superintendent, an assistant principal, or principal, wherever you are, that you pick up a copy of this book. It is a much needed account into. It's not an account. I mean, account is saying this lightly. It goes into the heart and soul of what it means to be a teacher. And again, powerful book. So I look forward to having Alexandra on the next episode, which should come out. It'll be that episode will be out, as I check the calendar here, April 17th. That episode will drop then. I look forward to sharing that with you. So just kind of a quick stop by in the Principal Liner Notes podcast. I'm grateful that you are here with me. Thank you again for pressing play or download. Feel free to follow the hashtag Principal Liner Notes. Also, it is Monday. We celebrate Monday. So I do hope that this Celebrate Monday has been filled with moments of promise, moments of joy, moments of reflection, and moments of peace. We definitely need a whole lot more peace in this world, and I hope that my podcast and our visit here was able to do that. This is Sean Gaylord. This is the Principal Liner Notes. Don't forget to share with the world your dreams and your ideas. And even though those dreams and ideas may be greeted with silence or indifference or the chirping of crickets, don't let those things stop or inhibit you from pursuing your vision and putting that vision into meaningful and dynamic action. The world needs your dreams and ideas, and you help make the world a better place. I'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks again for tuning in.